Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving into a case that will send chills down your spine. This isn't the story of a cold-blooded killer. It's not about murder for money, revenge, or twisted passion. This is the story of a father who personally sent his two young sons to their deaths in a dark, silent grave beneath the water. One decision, one act, and 3 lives forever destroyed. Kirk Douglas Billie, a man torn between 2 worlds. The deep-rooted traditions of the Miccosukee Native American tribe and the harsh reality of modern American law. On a quiet night in June 1997, Billie drove a black SUV to a remote canal near the tribal reservation. He stopped the car, opened the door, looked around, and then, with no hesitation, let the vehicle slip into the water, sinking deeper into the darkness. Inside the car were his sons, Kirk, 5 years old, and Keith, just 3, still fast asleep, unaware that their father had just become their executioner. The nation was stunned. Headlines screamed, "Father kills sons," calling Billie a heartless monster, a psychopath without remorse. But, was it really that simple? Billie told investigators he had no idea his children were in the back seat. He claimed he was trying to end his own life, not theirs. A failed suicide, not a calculated murder. And so, a firestorm of public debate began. Some demanded the death penalty. Others believed he was a broken man driven to the edge by loss, addiction, and despair. So, what really happened? Was this a brutal act of revenge, or a tragic moment of madness clouded by pain and misunderstanding? In today's video, we'll uncover the full story of Kirk Douglas Billie. From his troubled background and toxic relationships, to the chilling events of that night, and the trial that followed. But more than that, you'll be asked to consider a deeper question. Has justice truly been served? Or are some deaths the tragic cost of a world that refuses to listen? Part 2, A Broken Man in a Broken World, The Storm Before the Silence. Before that SUV ever touched the water, the real crash had already happened in Kirk Douglas Billie's life. He was born into the Miccosukee tribe, a tight-knit Native American community in the swamps of South Florida. Within the tribe, ancient customs and rituals still reigned, often clashing with the modern world outside. Billie was supposed to be a protector, a provider. Instead, he became a warning sign. His early adulthood was filled with alcohol abuse, domestic violence, and repeated run-ins with the law. Friends said he was troubled but soft-spoken, the kind of man who would cry over his children one day, then lash out the next. The toxic love. At the center of it all was Sheila Tiger, Billie's girlfriend and the mother of his 2 boys. Their relationship? Volatile. Arguments were frequent, sometimes violent. Cops were called more than once. And yet, they always came back to each other. Until they didn't. When Sheila finally broke things off for good, she took custody of Kurt and Keith. That sent Billie spiraling. His drinking got worse. His rage got louder. "She thinks she can keep my boys from me," he once muttered to a cousin. "No one keeps me from my sons." But Sheila didn't budge. She filed a restraining order, cut off communication, and even told the children's grandmother not to let Billie near them. It was a slow, burning fuse. And no one realized how close it was to the end. To outsiders, Billie's downward spiral looked like a typical story of a man who couldn't handle heartbreak. But those close to him saw something darker. He started talking like the world didn't need him, a family member said. Like he was already gone. He would show up drunk, sometimes barefoot, muttering about taking back control. Was it a cry for help, or the prelude to a plan? On the night of June 26, 1997, just one day before the tragedy, Billie went to see Sheila. He begged to take the boys for ice cream. She refused. "You're drunk," Sheila snapped. "They're asleep. And you're not taking them anywhere." "They're my sons," Billie shot back. "You don't get to decide that." Those were the last words they exchanged. Billie stormed off. Furious. Humiliated. And broken. That night, witnesses said Billie was seen wandering the streets near the reservation. He had a vacant look in his eyes and something clenched in his hand, a folded note, later found in the front seat of the SUV. The message was short, chilling, and angry. "Don't think you can stop me. No one can." The fuse had burned to its end. And by the next evening, it would all be over, for Billie, and for his sons. Part 3, The Night of Silence, when the SUV sank without a sound. Florida, the night of June 27, 1997. A humid, unremarkable evening in the swamplands of the Miccosukee Reservation. But somewhere in that darkness, a horrific crime was unfolding, one that would haunt Florida and the nation for years to come. It started with a stolen key. Kirk Douglas Billie returned to the home of Sheila Tiger's mother, where Sheila and the boys had been staying. No one heard shouting. No one saw him come in. He walked in quietly, reached for the keys to Sheila's black SUV, and left, without saying a word. The question that would linger for more than 2 decades is this. Did he know his 2 sons, Kurt and Keith, were asleep in the back seat? Billie would later claim that he didn't. That he just wanted to get away, or end it all. But evidence suggests the boys had been in the car for hours, fast asleep, unaware that their father had just stolen the vehicle, and their lives. A handwritten note, or a warning. He drove off into the night. When the SUV was found later, police recovered a folded note left on the front seat. It was handwritten, scrawled in a way that felt frantic and final. "Don't think you can stop me. No one can. No apology. No remorse. Just a cold, chilling message, directed at Sheila, the woman who had cut him off from his children." The road toward death. Billie drove south toward the Everglades, down long, empty stretches of highway, where man-made canals cut through the wilderness like scars. He wasn't lost. He wasn't wandering. He knew exactly where he was going. The SUV slowed near a narrow canal bridge, a place with no lights, no cameras, and no witnesses. Just darkness, insects, and the constant ripple of water like a ticking clock. He pulled over. Got out. Looked around. Nothing. No one. Silence. That final moment, intentional or accidental. In court, Billie would later say he just wanted it to end, and that he had no idea his sons were in the back seat. But what really happened? He stood next to the vehicle for nearly 20 minutes. He smoked a cigarette. He stared into the water. He opened the driver's door once. But he never checked the back seat. Did he avoid it on purpose? Or did he simply not care? That moment, right there, was the turning point. The line between recklessness and murder. Billy returned to the driver's seat. He started the engine, shifted into reverse, and slowly backed the SUV into the canal. The tires dipped. The water rose. Cold, dark water rushed in as the vehicle began to sink. There were no screams, no pounding fists. Kurt, 5, and Keith, 3, strapped into their seats, were still asleep. Or maybe they woke up as the water reached their faces. No one will ever know. Perhaps they never even had time to be afraid. As the water filled the cabin, Billy escaped, either through the driver's door or window. He swam to the shore, dripping wet and silent. Then, he walked away. No rescue call. No cry for help. No turning back. He lived. But his 2 sons were gone forever. With daylight came bubbles on the water's surface, a sign something was terribly wrong. Local residents called the police. Divers arrived and found the SUV completely submerged at the bottom of the canal. Doors shut. Headlights still on. Inside, a scene that would stay with them forever. Kirk and Keith were still in their seats, their small bodies floating gently. Faces pale. Still. Their eyes were closed. They looked like they were still asleep. If either boy had woken up at the last second. "Daddy, where are we going?" "Just a little longer, son, it'll all be quiet soon." But no words were spoken. Only silence. Only water. Only death. Billy was arrested just hours later. He didn't resist. Didn't cry. Didn't argue. He only said one thing. "I didn't know they were in the car." A sentence that could be true. Or the coldest lie a father ever told. Part 4, a wave of outrage, justice on tribal land. News of the tragic deaths of Kirk, 5, and Keith, 3, spread like wildfire throughout the Miccosukee tribal community in Florida. The boys weren't just any children, they were the grandsons of a respected tribal elder, and seen as the future of the powerful Tiger family line. The entire nation was in shock. People struggled to comprehend how a father could commit such a horrific act, and what made it even more chilling was how calmly Kirk Billie seemed to carry it out, as if it had all been premeditated. From local Florida outlets to national networks like CNN and NBC, headlines screamed, "Father kills sons by driving SUV into canal." Photos of Kirk Douglas Billie began circulating across news channels, often paired with heartbreaking images from the children's funeral, where 2 small coffins lay side by side. In the Everglades area, makeshift memorials popped up near the canal, flowers, teddy bears, candles, left by strangers mourning children they never knew. Americans were calling it the darkest hour of fatherhood. A journalist wrote, "Some monsters don't hide under the bed, they sit behind the wheel." But beyond the grief came outrage, because of the unexpected legal barriers in prosecuting Billie. Here's why. The crime happened on Miccosukee tribal land, governed by its own sovereignty under federal protection. Kirk Douglas Billie was a registered member of the tribe, meaning he fell under federal tribal jurisdiction. This meant the state of Florida had no authority to prosecute him under state criminal law, even with overwhelming evidence. This legal loophole pushed the victim's family, especially the boy's mother, Sheila Tiger, into despair. In a tearful interview with the media, Sheila pleaded, I begged them not to let him walk free. I've already lost my children, please don't let me lose justice too. The boy's grandmother, visibly furious, stated, "If the government won't act, we, the mothers and grandmothers, will take justice into our own hands." One of the local officers who responded to the scene recalled, "I've seen a lot in my career, but nothing like that. Those boys were like angels, and their own father did it. But our hands were tied. It was out of our jurisdiction." While Billie was temporarily held in custody, the authorities admitted, without federal or tribal cooperation, they couldn't charge him. The murder also caused a deep rift within the Miccosukee tribe. On one side, the Tiger family, demanding the harshest punishment for Billie, even though he was one of their own. On the other side, tribal officials who insisted, this is a tribal matter. Outsiders should not interfere. It was a moment of reckoning for the tribe. A tribal council member stated, "If we don't address this ourselves, the world will think the Miccosukee protect child killers." Facing mounting pressure from the media and public, the FBI and the U.S. Attorney's Office stepped in. They began working to shift the case to federal court, which had the authority to override tribal and state limitations. This marked a major turning point in the pursuit of justice, but the road ahead was still filled with legal landmines. People across Florida weren't just heartbroken, they were angry. Angry at the system, at the delays, at the feeling that the law was failing the most innocent among us. Protesters took to the streets with signs that read, "Crime deserves consequences. Justice should know no borders. Don't let justice sink with that SUV." Part 5, The Trial, a Father, a Killer, and a Nation Demanding Justice. The most anticipated trial of 2000. After more than 6 months of legal tug-of-war between the state of Florida, the U.S. federal government, and the Miccosukee tribe, the trial of Kirk Douglas Billie was finally scheduled at the U.S. District Court in Miami, Florida. From day one, the courtroom was packed. Media vans lined the street, journalists camped outside. Protest signs waved in the Florida heat. 2 children didn't die in silence. The law shouldn't be silent either. Murder knows no race or tribe. Killing is killing. Federal prosecutor James Horton began with a line that cut through the courtroom like a knife. Kirk Douglas Billie didn't just kill his children. He turned their seatbelts into shackles, and their car into a coffin. He didn't panic. He didn't resist. He didn't try to save them. He just stood and watched it all sink. The prosecution laid out a timeline and evidence that left little doubt. The brakes were never used before the SUV entered the canal. There were no skid marks, no signs of swerving or hesitation. Traffic cameras showed the vehicle accelerating steadily before plunging into the water. Therapy notes showed Billie once confessed to wanting to disappear with his kids. It painted a portrait not of a moment of madness, but of a deliberate execution. Billie's attorney, Michael Reeves, never denied that Billie was the driver. Instead, he argued from emotion. Kirk was a broken man. A soul crushed by trauma, loss, and addiction. He didn't plan to kill anyone. He just didn't want to live. Reeves brought in clinical psychologists who testified Billie suffered from borderline personality disorder, major depression, and childhood trauma from years of abuse. But the prosecution snapped back. Millions suffer trauma. Most don't kill their children. This wasn't mental illness. It was a choice. And he made it. The mother's testimony, they were not just numbers. Sheila Tiger, mother of Kurt and Keith, took the stand. She tried to hold her composure, but as she recalled the night her sons vanished, her voice cracked. I woke up feeling something was wrong. The back door was open. The car was gone. The boys were gone. I called Kirk. No answer. Deep down, I knew. But I didn't want to believe it. Her hands trembled as she described arriving at the scene. When I saw the divers pull two small white bags from the canal, I thought they were evidence bags, until I realized they were my boys. The room fell silent. One juror bit his lip. A reporter wiped her eyes. Even the court stenographer paused for a moment. Finally, Kirk Douglas Billie himself took the stand. Wearing a worn gray prison jumpsuit, his face expressionless, he slowly walked to the witness box. Asked directly, "Did you mean to kill your sons?" He replied, "I don't know. I just remember hurting. Everything in me hurt. I couldn't think anymore." The prosecutor stepped forward. "Do you remember Kurt screaming as the car sank? Do you remember Keith calling out for you before the water rushed in?" Billy lowered his head. "I remember Kurt yelling. Keith said, 'Daddy.' Then the water came. Then it was dark." Orton turned to the jury. He remembers it all. He was aware. He was calm. And he chose to do nothing. After 3 days of testimony and 7 hours of jury deliberation, the jury, 12 citizens, including 3 Native Americans, returned with a verdict. Guilty, 2 counts of first-degree murder. The judge delivered the sentence. Life in prison, without the possibility of parole. 2 life terms, to run consecutively. No appeals. No leniency. No second chances. There was no applause. No celebration. Just the quiet sobbing of a grieving mother in the back row. In the days following the verdict, the media turned the spotlight elsewhere. Why was Kirk Billie, with a history of threats and violence, still allowed unsupervised access to his children? Why did no one intervene, not law enforcement, not child protection services, before it was too late? A statement from the Florida Department of Child Welfare read, "Those boys were abandoned by the system before they were abandoned by their father." The case of Kirk Douglas Billie became more than just a murder trial. It was a turning point, a wake-up call about domestic violence, child protection, and the failures of the law when tribal sovereignty collides with state justice. Part 6, The Aftermath, a wound that never heals. A pain that time can't erase. Years have passed since the trial that shook the nation, but for the Miccosukee tribe, the case of Kirk Douglas Billie remains a scar that never truly healed. The names Kurt and Keith live on only in faded photographs, forgotten toys, and the eternal grief of their mother, Sheila Tiger. In a rare interview after the sentencing, she said, "I never blamed my children for loving their father. But I will always blame myself for not being there to save them." This case tore the mask off a troubling truth, that in the U.S., gaps between tribal, state, and federal law can delay, or even deny, justice. For months, the world watched a man who confessed to killing his children walk free, untouched by the law due to jurisdictional loopholes. One family lawyer put it bluntly, "If this had happened anywhere else but on tribal land, justice might have come much sooner." In the wake of the tragedy, child advocacy groups and legal reformers lobbied Congress to amend federal jurisdiction policies, especially in cases involving serious crimes against children on tribal lands. The elementary school that Kurt and Keith once attended now has a small memorial stone in its garden. Every year on June 28th, students and teachers light candles in silence to honor the boys. A former teacher of Kurt shared. He always smiled. Said he wanted to be a policeman one day, to catch bad guys. It breaks my heart that the first bad guy was his own father. Today, Kirk Douglas Billie sits behind bars in a federal maximum security prison. He will die there, never to taste freedom again. But no sentence, no matter how severe, can undo what he did. Justice may have been served, but the damage is permanent. 2 young lives were stolen. A mother's heart was shattered. And a nation was forced to look in the mirror. The case of Kirk Douglas Billie isn't just about one man's crime, it's a warning about what happens when we ignore red flags, when systems fail, and when we choose silence over intervention. Let us remember Kurt and Keith, not as victims, but as a call to action. Let their names echo as a reminder to speak up, to protect, and to act, before it's too late. If this story moved you, or made you reflect on the cracks in our justice system, please consider liking this video to help raise awareness. Commenting below, what do you think could have prevented this tragedy? Subscribing to the channel so you don't miss the next story that needs to be told. Every view, every share, helps make sure stories like Kurt and Keith's are never forgotten. Thanks for watching. Stay safe, stay aware, and never turn away when a child needs help.